Today, we're joined by Tiana O'Connor from the Rochester International Airport to join us and tell us a little bit about her career and how she got to where she's at. So thank you for joining us, Tiana. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do at the airport, and about the airport in general?
Sure. So thanks for having me participate in this. As you said, my name is Tiana. I am the Marketing and Communications Manager for the Rochester International Airport. A little bit about the Rochester Airport. We are a commercial service airport. So we have three airlines serving us: Delta, American, and United. We typically serve about 370,000 commercial passengers in the region. A lot of business travel, a lot of patient travelers in and out of Rochester. And beyond the commercial travel, we also have very major cargo operations, and we also have a lot of private flight operations. So anything from kind of a small flight training aircraft all the way up to large international jets that fly in for care at the Mayo Clinic. My role at the airport is to manage all of our communications. With that comes a lot of public facing interaction. So I spend time educating the public about the airport, talking about the importance of utilizing the airport. We do that through several ways. Typically when people are meeting in person, we go to different events and presentations. We're out networking a lot, talking about the airport. At this time, we're doing meetings online, virtually connecting via email. We also communicate through our website, which I manage, and our social media is a really big interaction point for us, as that's where you can get some really good two-way communication with the public and with travelers. Beyond that, I also work on air service development. So that is a pretty unique role that we have at the airport, which is to really, on behalf of the community, go talk with the airlines, the airline planning departments, about trying to bring in new flights to the Rochester Airport. We analyze data. We work with a partner who pulls travel data information for us that shows where we could potentially have a new flight, new destination out of Rochester. And then myself and our executive director, we travel to conferences, we travel to airline headquarters offices, and we have meetings periodically throughout the year to talk about the potential for adding new service in and out of Rochester, and helping the airport grow alongside the community, which is obviously poised for some continued growth.
Excellent. So Tiana, you and I have known each other for a while.
Mhm.
And I know that you have your path at the airport and your path to where you're at right now was not necessarily a straight line.
Correct.
Can you talk to people a little bit about that and kind of what that means and what that might mean to folks who are watching?
Yeah, so I graduated from high school out of Southwest Minnesota. I knew that I wanted to go to a four-year college, and I had a lot of interest in pursuing Spanish as a major. I had taken years of that in high school and was looking towards trying to find a career eventually that would kind of use the skills of both Spanish and then business. I completed a Spanish major with a business concentration out of La Crosse. I moved to Rochester after graduating seeing it as a community that had a lot of opportunity, and kind of the right size for me. It wasn't as small as kind of going back home. It wasn't as big as heading off to, the Twin Cities or a different metro area. I found my footing in Rochester. But I really didn't connect with the type of career that I thought I was going to coming out of college. So I had a Spanish major with a business concentration. And at the time, they're just, the economy was a little different. There weren't quite as many jobs available in the areas that I was pursuing. So just to get my feet on the ground and start doing some work, I worked through a temp agency and did some work in different Mayo Clinic offices. They really weren't leading to kind of any professional development or long-term career. So I'd continue working with the temp agency and saying, I'd love to find something that's a little bit better fit for me. And they actually happened to have a position become available at the Rochester Airport, which was an administrative assistant position. Kind of described it as being a small office. You fill a lot of different roles. And I was really interested. And so went out, met with the team, was able to be hired on as a part-time temporary position. And when I started there, it was a lot of kind of office support role. So being a small team, there was only 4 of us in the administration office. I felt that I got kind of a good understanding of the inner workings of the airport, and could see that there was a lot of potential to grow there. And so over time, my position began to really morph. And so after about a year of being there was a role that needed to be filled for more of the kind of daily accounting work to take place within our office. And I had some accounting background through my college education, but was looking to kind of enhance that. And so I was lucky. The Rochester Airport was supportive of me going back to school. So I went back through RCTC and got an Associates of Accounting degree. And as I was learning, I was applying that knowledge daily. So I began to take on more and more responsibilities on the accounting side. Um, with that, I began to be more involved in kind of the business side of things, and could really see the potential for growth of the Rochester Airport. And we went through a lot of change. It was, some leadership changes, some industry changes that really kind of forced us into a position of looking at what we were doing and how we needed to start doing it differently. And so the airport went through a strategic planning process. And through that, had identified that there was a greater need to communicate and engage with the public. And so I really began to find a niche within that. I began to kind of work my way towards supporting those efforts, coming up with new ideas, getting myself more involved in that space. And it really started to feel like a much better fit. And so we went through a bit of a reorganization process, and gratefully, there was a new position that was created. There had never previously been a marketing manager at the airport. So I knew the airport, I knew our customers, and I was able to begin filling that role. I had taken, a couple marketing classes in college, but hadn't been, specifically trained in that with a 4-year degree. And yet I could find that the knowledge that I was applying daily, and then the things that I was continuing to kind of teach myself along the way or learn from industry peers, watch what other airports were doing, I was able to find myself a really good spot that felt like a better match for kind of my personality, my desires, my skills, and then grow into it. And so I've been in that role now for about 5 years, and it's continued to morph over time. But, for a career at a place where I've been there almost, 15 years, it's drastically changed. The airport has drastically changed, and my role has drastically changed. And I've just been grateful that I've had opportunities to kind of shift, pivot a little bit, and then find my way to what feels like a really great fit right now.
One of the things that you talked about that I really think we need to discuss with the students that are watching is you talked a number of times about leadership changes and what that meant for your career and what that means for the staff. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to work through leadership changes and perhaps have a little bit different vision than what was the vision previously?
Sure. Yeah, so it's very interesting because having been at the airport now for 15 years, the airport, Rochester Airport, in its 92-year history has only ever had 5 airport managers, and I've worked with 3 of them. So, that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of the pace of change that we've had. So, um, we had a new director who had come in from a different community where he just saw things differently, not good or bad necessarily, but just had a different perspective on how to run the airport in maybe a little bit more entrepreneurial style, which leads to the marketing and community engagement. He put a lot of great initiatives into place, really kind of energized the staff to start thinking differently, and begin kind of, we really became empowered, make some of your own decisions, come up with your own ideas, let's work together to kind of better the airport environment. And so a lot of those changes came in, and then that director actually moved on to a different job, and our just a new opportunity came up for him in the industry, probably quicker than he had expected. And so John Reed came in to the airport a little over about 5.5 years ago. And luckily, he had a lot of that same drive and momentum as the previous director. So it helped because we were able to, have somebody who kind of came in and I'd say shook things up a little bit. But then at the core, the strategic plan that we had gone through with that director still stayed in place. So when we had a new director, John, come in to play, he was on board with that strategy, and he continued us down that path and really encouraged employees to continue developing within the industry, continue, learning more, coming up with new ideas. I began to expand my role even from just the marketing and communication side to involving myself in the air service development and seeing how I really kind of had a nice fit towards that relationship building side of things too. And have been encouraged to do things like in industry certifications, and beginning to learn more about kind of our industry as a whole, and developing myself so that I can take that knowledge and apply it to the Rochester Airport to help improve what we're doing.
So one of the things that you talked about a number of different times, and I want to make sure we don't miss, is you talked a lot about what you've done for continuing education,
Mhm.
both in school or in class, and then what you've done yourself outside of that. Can you talk a little bit about your path in continuing education and why you find it so important?
Yeah, I think I think it would be unlikely for somebody to find a job, um, do it well, and to never have to continue to learn anything else. The industry changes, that whatever it might be that you're in, the economy fluctuates over time, pandemics hit. I mean, people go through leadership changes. You have to be able to kind of pivot and expand your knowledge in order to be able to maneuver through all of those things. So whether it is kind of developing um, your core knowledge of specifically the business or the industry that you're in, I think that's a really great way to be able to not necessarily reinvent the wheel. I mean, there's a lot of places where you can learn from another business, learn from another airport in my situation, and apply some of those things that can help enhance what you're doing. And as you see opportunities, whether it's within the same company you're in or perhaps changing careers, there might be an opportunity that you take a look at maybe the education that you've completed so far, and you might feel that you have a drive to expand on it, go back for continuing education, or go back for a completely new, set of classes and a new degree. I think all of that is very valid, and it really just helps you develop yourself personally and professionally.
On that same note, what kind of advancement opportunities are there in the Rochester International Airport, in the airline industry in
Mhm.
general?
Mhm.
because we've talked a lot about that in that continuing education. I'm curious because a lot of people may not know a lot about the airline industry.
Yeah, so there's just a wide variety of careers within aviation. I mean, a lot of people, I think the first thing that they kind of think of is their own personal experience flying, and they tend to think towards things that involve maybe, a pilot or a flight crew or air traffic control. Those are some that might be a little bit more obvious or visible to, the general public. As you begin to get a little bit deeper, you look at the fact that um, there are so many users of an airport beyond just kind of the commercial airlines. There's the cargo operations, the private flight operations, there's airport operators. That would be who I work for, actually managing the airport as a whole. Um, and you've got anybody from, I guess I would say kind of frontline workers making the daily operations happen through the airlines. You've got any kind of business application that you can think of. They've got accounting departments, marketing departments, and sales departments, and leadership roles. And so there's just a really, really wide variety of careers. What I have always really been passionate about is the fact that the aviation industry is just really pretty fascinating. I mean, people love travel, I mean, it's everybody has been impacted by travel in one way or another, whether it's, personal and the experiences that you get to have if you go on a vacation or go to visit loved ones, or it's, career opportunities, traveling to go interview for a job or make a business deal happen, or even as we see in our community, patient travelers, traveling into to get medical care and being able to do that because of the aviation industry. And so um, it just has a really major impact on almost everybody's lives. And so it's just really fascinating, all of the different facets of aviation.
So if a student is out there and they're thinking about getting into the aviation industry, do you have any basic classes that you would suggest that they take? Obviously, knowing there's a wide array of what people can do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would suggest trying to learn as much on kind of a broad scale as you can about maybe different opportunities within the industry. I do know that the Federal Aviation Administration, so FAA.gov, they have resources on their website about career opportunities within the industry. And that's really a good place to kind of like dip your toe in and find out, what are those opportunities that are even out there? Are you looking for something that might be really kind of hands-on mechanical, flying a plane, working on maintenance in a front line at an airport? That's going to be a completely different path, I would say, than somebody who might have an industry interest in kind of the business side of things within the industry. And for that, I mean, honestly, you could find yourself in any path, whether it's economics or business development or accounting, marketing, any of those paths could really find yourself a home within the industry. Um, a lot of times, what we see too is individuals who might have a certain skill set, who perhaps let's say they've started a career at an airport. Um, they might find that they really want to go kind of learn or expand or do something differently, and they might go work for an airline because they can apply a lot of their same knowledge, but do it in a different way and kind of from a different perspective. And then there are those that find themselves that have worked at an airline and have, you know, um, decades worth of knowledge of the industry, and they might want to branch out and become a consultant and then begin working with different airports or different airlines and use their knowledge in that way. So I think that you can start, kind of down one path, and then really just kind of broaden yourself to end up, in any position that you would like.
So I want to talk a little bit more about your personal journey. And with that, about what it takes, how you think, and this is a bit conjecture, but how you think you managed to move in from a temporary position to be in the position you're in right now. How you earned the trust of everybody inside of the organization, so they wanted to continue to encourage you to advance.
So I guess I've always prided myself in doing a job well, whatever that job might be. So when I started and I was, doing an administrative assistant role, um, you might not necessarily correlate that to somebody who's, taken on a 4-year degree, and yet I was very invested in doing my job well and learning how I could then continue to expand. And so whether it was answering the phone or, filling envelopes, even, I mean, whatever it might be, I was going to do it well. I was going to do it efficiently. And I was going to continue to look for those opportunities that really kind of sparked my passion a little bit more. And so I also wasn't afraid to speak up when I saw an opportunity that I felt like could be a good fit for me. So whether that might be asking to join a meeting, asking a colleague to learn a little bit more about what it is that they might be doing that you find interesting, raising your hand to volunteer for something that you think that you might be good at, that maybe somebody else isn't really wanting to fulfill that role. Just being open to new opportunities. Um, and I guess I've always had a passion for improving the Rochester airport. I love the Rochester community. And so I have a really vested interest in, building my career there. There are some people who get within the industry and, they might kind of feel like an airport of Rochester size might be a stepping stone to a next larger airport and then the next larger airport. And that's great for some people. But having a love for the community and feeling that this is my home, I don't feel at this point in time that I would want to move on to, oh, my next step in my career would be working at MSP. I mean, that's not necessarily where I see myself. What I see is how can I continue to expand on what we're doing and really pull in more responsibilities under my personal role.
I know things are a little bit different in the middle of the pandemic, especially in the airline industry.
Mhm.
But what does your average day look like? And maybe if you want to talk about it, what did it look like before we got into this kind of unique situation?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start with before. So one of the things that I had always really loved about my job was the wide variety. So I have an office at the airport, and there were times when I could spend the entire day behind my computer, just hammering out work, connecting through a lot of emails, working on projects for us at the airport. Kind of in that desk position. The next day we might have something going on at the airport that would be of interest to the public. And so I might, walk out onto the ramp or hop in a truck with somebody and go take pictures of, aircraft landing at the airport and the runway and, be able to then go post those on social media. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of fulfill my role. And, you know, with the community engagement side, that took a lot of public interactions. And so, I would attend meetings with the Chamber of Commerce or Destination Medical Center or Convention and Visitors Bureau, and Mayo Clinic. And so a lot of like collaborative meetings where the airport really needed to have a seat at the table to be able to be included and a part of the discussions and to bring our information to those community organizations to make sure that they were aware of what was going on at the airport. So um, on the flip side of kind of the day at the desk, I might have a day where I am just on the go constantly and I'm downtown for 4 meetings consecutively. Um, that ability to have that variety and what those interactions were helped me to feel like I, was always energized by my role. Now everything looks a little bit differently. Some of my colleagues are working in the office still. They have roles where they need to be a little bit more hands-on, closer to the airport environment, closer to operations, kind of things like that. So those folks are still working in the office, kind of within their own set space. I right now have the flexibility to be able to work from home because we're not having in-person meetings. And so I'm grateful for that opportunity. And what would have been, running to meetings, out about in the community has now transferred to Zoom and virtual meetings online. So I would say I have a little bit different, feel towards my day right now. But I really do feel like as conditions change, as we enter into kind of a new phase after we get through this all, people enjoy face-to-face interactions, and it might not get back to what it was, but whether it's community gatherings and events where we're supporting the airport and bringing our message to the public, or if it's committee work, getting together around a table with city leaders, or if it's flying to an airline headquarters meeting and representing us at industry conferences, those opportunities I truly believe will all come back. So for right now, I'm kind of enjoying the ability to kind of work from home. Um, Honestly, have a few less distractions at times versus some of the office environment. But also know that, at some point I'm going to have that craving to kind of like get back to those personal interactions, as I think many of us will. And I see myself kind of stepping back into a lot of what my day to day used to be, that becoming kind of my routine again.
So, Tiana, one of the things that you haven't specifically stated, but I think is relatively clear based on this interaction, is that a lot of soft skills are required to do the work that you do. So, can you talk a little bit about what soft skills are required and, or you would say is required, and then kind of what you would recommend people do to kind of learn those soft skills?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess a few of the things that I might have touched on, just the ability to have drive to expand your knowledge, and the drive to do whatever job it is that you're doing to do it well. I think that those are very important, and those can apply to essentially anybody in any industry. Um, the interesting thing, I think, is that with my varying roles at the airport, I always liked the environment and I liked the people I was working with, but I could kind of tell when there was a disconnect of what some of my soft skills were and what I was doing in my day to day work. And so I actually was a participant in the Leadership Greater Rochester class through the Rochester Chamber of Commerce in 2016 and 2017. And throughout that process, we went through the Strengths Finder exam. And, that's something interesting to kind of take a look at. I'm not sure how any of the viewers would be familiar with that, but essentially you are helping to identify kind of like how your brain works, and what some of those top strengths are that you have and how you can apply them as a leader. So I was fairly new to my role in the marketing and communications position, as I was going through that leadership process. And we took the exam, and my top 5 strengths are strategic, empathy, maximizer, communication, and woo, which is winning others over. And when I took that test and I heard those 5 words, and then I looked at what I thought a marketing and communications person would do, and it was like a light bulb. I went, well, of course I love what I'm doing. This is my wheelhouse. This is how my brain is meant to fire. I want to communicate effectively. I like, understanding people and using my empathy, and those are important in relationship building. And the term woo is winning others over. And that's something where it helps you to gain common ground with people and to network well, to build relationships. And, strategic applies in ways that we are always looking at how we are going to continue to build and grow at the airport, and kind of what are our goals and what is that plan to get there. And maximizer is one where it means that you kind of appreciate doing a job well, you appreciate kind of putting a polish on things. And so to identify those things, those 5 words, and to really kind of see how that has suited me in the role that I have found myself in, it felt like a bit of an aha moment. And I felt really grateful that what some of my soft skills were that I didn't even know that I could necessarily identify, all of a sudden felt like they clicked, and they were right along with the professional career that I had found myself in.
So to kind of wrap up here, you've done a great job kind of talking to people about the airport, about what you do. If someone wanted to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing so?
Yeah, so I would say at this point in time, email is probably the best way to reach me. That way, if I'm tied up in meetings or on phone calls, I don't miss that connection. It's just sitting in my inbox to reach back out. And so my email address is T O'Connor. So it's TOCONNOR at flyrst.com. I'm happy to talk with anybody about kind of anything that I've addressed today and expand on it. Or, I tend to be in a position where I know a lot of people, whether it's at the airport or potentially within the industry, that I can help kind of make a connection. And, if you have an interest that maybe isn't something that I'm necessarily as familiar with, like air traffic control operations, I might not be able to tell you much about that profession personally, but I can definitely get you connected with the local manager who might be able to arrange, a meeting, an interview to kind of learn more about it. So happy to connect in whatever way helps serve people.
Thank you, Tiana. This was a tremendous interview, and you provided a lot of great information for the students that are watching. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.